The rain didn't just fall in Seattle that night, it attacked, a relentless assault on the glass walls of my family's waterfront mansion, each drop a hammer strike against my already fraying nerves. Inside, the gala pulsed with the kind of energy only money and ambition could buy. Tech moguls, venture capitalists, and startup prodigies mingled under crystal chandeliers, their laughter sharp as the clink of champagne flutes. My sister Claire's promotion to managing partner at Apex Ventures was the official reason for this spectacle, but everyone knew the real star was my mother, Evelyn Blake, orchestrating every handshake, every smile, like a puppeteer pulling invisible strings. I stood near the bar, my navy dress clinging to my skin, the silk too tight for comfort, trying to blend into the crowd while my boyfriend Ethan fetched us drinks. 3 years together, and I still felt like an intruder in my own family's world, a graphic designer among titans of code and capital. The mansion was a labyrinth of polished excess, marble floors that gleamed like ice, abstract sculptures that cost more than my annual rent, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing the stormy Puget Sound. I'd grown up here, but it never felt like home, more like a stage where I was expected to perform a role I didn't understand. Claire, 2 years older and a universe more confident, was the daughter my mother had molded into a weapon. Sharp, ambitious, unstoppable. I was the dreamer, the one who sketched logos in the margins of my notebooks, who saw beauty in chaos while Claire conquered it. Ethan had been my anchor, the software engineer who'd promised me forever under the neon glow of the Space Needle. But tonight, something felt off, like a note played just out of tune. I was halfway down the main hallway, its walls lined with curated art, Warhols and Basquiat's my mother had bought to impress, when I heard my name. It wasn't a call, it was a hiss, sharp and deliberate, cutting through the gala's hum like a blade. My mother's voice, silk-wrapped steel, stopped me dead. Nora's creative, sure, but Claire's the one with real power. Ethan, you need a partner who dominates, not dreams. My heels sank into the plush carpet, my breath catching like a hook in my throat. The words came from the study, its heavy oak door cracked just enough to betray the scene inside. I edged closer, my heart pounding, and peered through the gap. Ethan stood there, his broad shoulders slouched, holding 2 glasses of bourbon, mine and his, the drinks he'd promised to grab. My boyfriend, my future, my everything. I love Nora, he said, his voice low, hesitant, like he was testing the words against some unspoken truth. But Claire's unstoppable. I can't ignore that. The room spun, my vision narrowing to a pinprick. My mother's laugh was soft, almost maternal, but it carried a blade. Love's sweet, Ethan, but it's not enough. Claire's building an empire at Apex. Nora's doodling logos in her sketchbook. Think about your future. Think about who can carry you there. Her words were a guillotine, severing the life I'd built in my head. Ethan and me, a shared apartment, maybe a ring one day. 3 years of late-night talks, of promises whispered over coffee at Pike Place, of plans to weather Seattle's storms together. It all unraveled in a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I pressed myself against the wall, the wood paneling biting into my back, willing my legs not to buckle. My pulse roared in my ears, louder than the rain, louder than the party. Ethan didn't protest. He didn't defend me. He just stood there, silent, his hazel eyes fixed on the bourbon in his hands, as if the answers were hidden in the amber liquid. My mother leaned closer, her navy sheath dress catching the lamplight, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Claire's AI patent deal closes next month. She'll be untouchable. Nora's? Well, she's soft. She'll always be chasing feelings, not results. You're smarter than that, Ethan. You know what you need. I couldn't breathe. The hallway felt like a tunnel, closing in, the air too thick to swallow. I wanted to scream, to barge in and demand why my mother was rewriting my life, why Ethan was letting her. But my body betrayed me, rooting me to the spot like a coward. The study's door creaked wider, and I bolted, my heels clicking too loudly on the marble, my dress catching on a decorative table as I fled toward the back exit. The rain hit me like a slap, soaking my skin, my hair, my everything. I didn't care. I needed air, space, anything to stop the words looping in my head. Nora's doodling logos, Claire's building an empire, and Ethan's silence, louder than any betrayal. The mansion's dock stretched into Puget Sound, its wooden planks slick and gleaming under the storm. I ran to the edge, my breath ragged, and gripped the metal railing, its cold bite grounding me for a fleeting second. The water churned below, black and endless, mirroring the chaos inside me. My mother had always favored Claire, her golden child, the one who'd followed her into the cutthroat world of tech venture capital. I'd thought I was enough for Ethan, that my art, my quiet ambition, could hold its own against Claire's supernova. But now, standing on that dock, I saw the truth. I was a placeholder, a stepping stone to something shinier. The railing gave way with a sickening crack. I didn't even have time to scream before I plunged into the icy water. The shock stole my breath, the current pulling me under like it had hands. My dress tangled around my legs, heavy as chains, dragging me deeper into the dark. My lungs burned, my arms flailed, clawing for a surface that wouldn't come. This was it. Drowning in my family's shadow, literally and figuratively, my vision blurred, the cold seeping into my bones, when a rough hand grabbed my wrist, yanking me upward. I broke the surface, gasping, coughing, as a grizzled fisherman in a yellow slicker hauled me onto his skiff. "You okay, miss?" he rasped, his voice barely audible over the storm's howl. I nodded, shivering, too stunned to speak. He didn't ask questions, just draped a scratchy wool blanket over my shoulders and motored back to shore, his boat creaking under the waves. I staggered back to the gala, dripping wet, my makeup streaked, my pride in tatters. The fisherman had saved my life, but he couldn't save me from what came next. I slipped through the side entrance, avoiding the main hall, my soaked dress leaving a trail on the marble. The party's glow pulled me like a moth to a flame, and I hovered near the ballroom's edge, hidden by a velvet curtain. That's when I saw them. Claire, radiant in her emerald gown, had Ethan on the dance floor, her hand possessive on his arm, her laugh bright and calculated. He didn't pull away. His eyes, those hazel eyes I'd loved for years, lingered on her, soft and conflicted, like he was seeing her for the first time. The crowd cheered, mistaking their chemistry for professional camaraderie, but I saw it for what it was, the beginning of my erasure. I stayed through the night, a ghost in my own life. My cousins hugged me, their warmth a cruel contrast to the cold inside. Claire's colleagues cornered me, gushing about her AI patent deal, oblivious to my dripping hair and trembling hands. I nodded, smiled, played the part, but every step felt like walking on glass, every breath a battle to keep from shattering. My mother's knowing glances burned worse than the salt water still clinging to my skin. She moved through the crowd like a queen, her navy dress a perfect match for the night's cruelty, her eyes flicking to me only once, as if to say, "You heard, didn't you? Good." Ethan found me later, near the dessert table, his smile forced, his tie slightly askew. "Where'd you go? You're soaked." His voice was casual, but his eyes darted, avoiding mine. I mumbled something about the rain, my voice hollow, barely mine. He didn't press, just handed me a fresh bourbon and drifted back to Claire's orbit, where she held court with Apex board members. I watched them, my sister and my boyfriend, laughing under the chandeliers, their ease a knife in my chest. The bourbon burned my throat, but it didn't dull the pain. I stood there, invisible, drowning on dry land, while the life I'd built slipped through my fingers. The weeks that followed were a slow bleed, each day a new wound. Ethan grew distant, his texts shorter, his excuses sharper. "Work's crazy," he'd say, his voice clipped, but I'd see him tagged in Instagram stories at Apex's exclusive tech mixers, Claire always at his side, her smile triumphant. I tried to hold on, to believe the man who'd promised me forever hadn't traded me for my sister's ambition, but doubt gnawed at me, a parasite I couldn't shake. I spent nights alone in my Capitol Hill apartment, sketching designs that felt futile, the city's rain a constant reminder of that night on the dock. My portfolio, once a source of pride, now seemed childish, a collection of dreams no one valued. One night, restless and desperate for answers, I'd borrowed Ethan's laptop to check a design file I'd sent him. He'd left it open on my coffee table, his screensaver a photo of us at Lake Union, smiling like we still had a future. I clicked through his folders, my stomach twisting, and that's when I found it. An encrypted email from Claire, buried in his inbox. The subject line was blank, but the message was a gut punch. Project Eclipse will change everything. Keep Nora out. My blood ran cold. Project Eclipse. What were they hiding? The email was dated the night of the gala, sent hours after I'd nearly drowned. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling, the words searing into me. Keep Nora out. Out of what? Their project? Their lives? I confronted Ethan the next morning, my voice shaking as I held up his laptop. What's Eclipse? Why does Claire want me out? He flinched, his jaw tightening, but his eyes betrayed him, guilt, plain as day. It's just a work thing, he snapped, snatching the laptop from my hands. You're paranoid, Nora. Claire's a colleague. Stop making this weird. His words stung, but his deflection was worse. He didn't even try to reassure me, just grabbed his jacket and left for a meeting that smelled like another lie. I stood in my apartment, the rain drumming against my windows, feeling smaller than ever. Ethan wasn't just pulling away. He was choosing Claire, and he didn't even have the guts to admit it. The real knife came at a family dinner 2 weeks later. My mother's dining room was a shrine to her ego, all polished mahogany and curated art, the kind of place that made you feel small if you weren't invited to shine. Claire sat at the head of the table, basking in Evelyn's announcement of her latest triumph, a multi-million-dollar AI patent deal that would cement Apex's dominance in the tech world. Claire's rewriting the future, my mother said, her smile razor-sharp, her eyes glinting with pride. Unlike some who prefer hobbies. Her gaze flicked to me, dismissing my graphic design portfolio as if it were a child's crayon drawing. I felt the room shrink, my place in it erased, my fork frozen in my hand. Ethan, seated next to Claire, nodded along, avoiding my eyes, his silence a betrayal louder than words. Then I saw it, Claire's hand, casual but deliberate, resting on Ethan's thigh under the table. His fingers didn't push her away, they lingered, entwined, a silent agreement sealed in the candlelight. My mother's smile widened, approving, as if she'd choreographed the moment from the start. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to demand why my family was stealing my life. But I sat there, silent, my pulse pounding in my ears. The betrayal wasn't just Ethan's. It was all of them, my mother and sister, conspiring to replace me with someone they deemed worthy. I excused myself, mumbling something about a headache, and fled to the bathroom, where I gripped the sink, staring at my reflection. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, her eyes hollow, her jaw tight. Who are you? I thought, and why are you letting them do this? Driving home that night, the rain was a mirror to my chaos, blurring the city into streaks of neon and shadow. I was halfway down a steep Capitol Hill street, my mind replaying Claire's hand on Ethan's thigh, when my brakes failed. The pedal sank to the floor, useless as my car careened toward a ravine. My heart slammed against my ribs, my hands yanking the wheel in a desperate bid for control. The car spun, tires screeching, and slammed into a guardrail, the impact jarring my bones. The airbag didn't deploy, but the car stopped inches from a fatal drop into the dark. I sat there, shaking, the rain pounding my windshield, my breath coming in shallow gasps. A tow truck arrived an hour later, the driver's face grim as he inspected my car. The mechanic's verdict came the next day. Someone cut your brake lines. You're lucky to be alive." I told only Riley, my best friend since high school, meeting her at a dive bar in Fremont, the kind of place where the jukebox played Nirvana and the bartender didn't ask questions. Riley's cybersecurity badge was still clipped to her jacket, her eyes scanning the room like she expected trouble. "Your family's playing dirty," she said, her voice low, her fingers tapping her beer bottle. "Evelyn's ruthless and Claire's worse. Get out, Nora, before they ruin you." I wanted to argue, to say I could fix this, that Ethan was still mine, but the evidence was piling up. The email, the dance, the breaks. Someone had tried to kill me, or at least scare me into silence. Riley leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I've seen Apex's contracts. Eclipse isn't just a project. It's a power grab. If they're cutting you out, they're not just after Ethan. They're after everything." Her words haunted me, but I clung to hope, a fool's lifeline. I bought 2 tickets to the Lumineers, Ethan's favorite band, planning a surprise date to reclaim what we'd lost. I told myself it was a gesture, a way to remind him of who we were before Claire's shadow swallowed us. I drove to his loft in Belltown, my key in hand, the one he'd given me when we talked about moving in together. The air was thick with jasmine, Claire's perfume, a scent that didn't belong. Her designer coat hung on the rack, a trail of clothes, her silk blouse, his tie, leading to the bedroom like a taunt. My pulse was a drumbeat, my legs moving on autopilot. I knew what I'd find, but I needed to see it, to make it real. The bedroom door was ajar. Claire's laugh, low and triumphant, hit me first, followed by the creak of the mattress, Ethan's voice murmuring something too soft to hear. I pushed the door open, my hand trembling. There they were, tangled in his sheets, Claire's hair spilling across his chest like a victory flag. She didn't flinch when she saw me, just smirked, pulling the covers higher with a lazy confidence. "You didn't really think he'd choose you, did you?" Her voice was a blade, sharp and precise, cutting through the last of my defenses. Ethan scrambled for a shirt, his face flushed with guilt, his eyes wide with panic. "Nora, I cut him off, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Don't lie, don't explain, just tell me how long." Claire answered, her tone bored like I was an inconvenience. 6 months. Mom planned it at the gala. The ticket slipped from my hands, scattering across the hardwood like confetti from a funeral. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of stolen moments, of my mother's voice whispering in Ethan's ear while I planned our future. I turned, my heels loud against the floor, Ethan's apologies chasing me like a weak echo. "Nora, I'm sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." But it had happened, and no words could undo it. I drove through the storm, tears blurring the road, the city's lights mocking me with their indifference. The rain was my only witness, washing away the last of my illusions. I didn't go home. I couldn't face my apartment, its walls lined with sketches of a life that no longer existed. Instead, I drove to my mother's house, the mansion looming like a monument to my failure. She was arranging lilies in a vase, her hands steady, her face serene, as if she hadn't orchestrated my destruction. "You did this," I said, my voice raw, my hands clenched at my sides. "You pushed Ethan toward Claire. You chose her over me." She didn't look up, just clipped a stem with precision, the snip loud in the quiet room. "Don't be dramatic, Nora. Claire's a titan. You're a sketchbook. Relationships end. Move on." Her dismissal was a final blow, sharper than the brake lines, sharper than Claire's smirk. I stood there, my chest heaving, searching for something to say, something to make her see me. But she never would. I was her daughter, but I wasn't her legacy. That was Claire, always Claire. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and walked to the kitchen, where I left a note on her marble counter. "I'll rise without you." 3 words, all I could manage, but they carried the weight of my resolve. I packed my life into my hatchback, art supplies, a duffel of clothes, my portfolio, and a folder labeled San Francisco. Riley had mentioned the city's tech scene, a place where dreamers could reinvent themselves. It wasn't a plan, just a direction, but it was enough to point my car west. I drove through the night, the rain giving way to a gray dawn, my heart heavy, but my mind clear. Crossing the Oregon border, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a skin that never fit. Then I saw it in my rear view, a black SUV tailing me for miles. My pulse spiked, Riley's warning echoing in my head. They're playing dirty. I sped up, my hands gripping the wheel, but the SUV matched me, closing the gap. On a deserted stretch of highway, it swerved, ramming my bumper. My car spun, tires screeching, and I veered off the road into a ditch, the impact jarring my teeth. The SUV slowed, its tinted windows hiding the driver, then peeled away, leaving me in the dust. I stumbled out, my hands shaking, my breath ragged, and ran into the forest, the pines swallowing me whole. I hid among the trees, my heart pounding, until the sky lightened, the first rays of sun filtering through the branches. Whoever they were, they wanted me scared. Or worse. San Francisco was my gamble, a city of fog and ambition where I could disappear and rebuild. I checked into a rundown motel in the Mission District, its neon sign buzzing like a warning. The room smelled of bleach and regret, the walls thin enough to hear the couple next door arguing in Spanish. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A blank slate in a city that didn't know my name. I gave myself 10 minutes. 10 minutes to cry, to rage, to feel the weight of a family that had traded me for power. I sat on the edge of the bed, my face in my hands, the tears hot and silent, my body shaking with the betrayal. Ethan's face, Claire's smirk, my mother's cold eyes. They haunted me, but I wouldn't let them win. I stood, wiping my face, and opened my laptop, my fingers trembling as I typed, "Job San Francisco Tech." The screen glowed, a lifeline in the dark, promising a chance to prove them wrong. But as I unpacked my bag, a scrap of paper fell out, its words scrawled in unfamiliar ink. "They're watching. Trust no one." My breath caught, my eyes darting to the motel's window, the curtains fluttering in the breeze. Was it Riley warning me from afar? Or someone else, pulling me deeper into a game I didn't understand? I tucked the note into my pocket, my resolve hardening. Seattle had broken me, but San Francisco would be where I fought back. Whoever was watching, whatever they wanted, I'd face them on my terms. This wasn't just a new start, it was a declaration of war.